Hey everyone, welcome back to Lunar Arcade. Today we're diving deep into the Nintendo Switch 2 to see how it handles games both with and without Switch 2 patches. We're testing everything from Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom to Pokémon Violet, Shield, Arceus, and even Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and Age of Calamity. If you love performance breakdowns, side-by-side comparisons with the Switch OLED, and discovering which games are secretly getting better thanks to the new hardware, make sure to like, subscribe, and tap that bell icon so you don't miss out on what's next. The Switch 2 isn't just powerful, it's smart. Games that haven't received official patches still run smoother thanks to the translation layer that boosts performance across the board. So even if a title doesn't have a Switch 2 upgrade pack, it's still benefiting from the extra CPU, GPU, and faster storage. Think of it as brute forcing better performance, and it works. Frame rates are now solid, dynamic resolution targets hold more consistently, and in many cases, it feels like you're playing remastered versions. Games like Batman Arkham Knight and Dragon Quest Builders 2 do better, but aren't perfect because of how CPU bound or unoptimized they were. Modern Vintage Gamer goes over this in detail on his channel, explaining how some games truly need dev patches to fully shine on the Switch 2. Let's talk Zelda. When I first powered on my Switch 2, I went straight into Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Breath of the Wild now runs at a solid 60 FPS at 1440p docked and 1080p at 60 FPS in handheld. Even in areas like the Korok Forest, which used to tank the frame rate and blur the image on the original Switch, it's beautiful and buttery smooth now. Tears of the Kingdom, same story. The stutters and FPS drops during building sequences, gone. It's finally the experience we were promised, especially now that you can track lore with the Zelda Notes app. And it's safe to say this works for both handheld and docked. Those FPS issues are gone, and you can now enjoy a smooth frame rate throughout the entire game. I'd also like to note that if you have an HDR-compatible TV, these games look amazing since they also received an HDR patch along with the performance boost that they received in the upgrade. Colors just pop and look very vibrant. They also look really great in handheld mode, so those of you that were worried about it not being an OLED, you don't have to worry, it looks great. Up next, Pokemon. This is where things get really interesting. Pokemon Violet is practically a different game on the Switch 2. It now runs at a 1440p, 60 FPS docked, and 1080p 60 FPS in handheld, and the difference is immediately noticeable. The draw distances are significantly improved, more Pokemon spawn on screen, the foliage shimmers, everything feels more vibrant and alive, but, and this is important, while the performance is drastically better, some of the old problems still linger. Some textures are questionable. And the pop-in is poorly handled, sometimes causing weird flickering, even indoors. And while the Switch 2's hardware handles NPCs and background animations beautifully now, finally at a full frame rate, the development quirks of the game still show. The good news, the game is a blast to play, the frame pacing is consistent, and the Switch 2 handles the workload like a champ. The bad news, some of the jank is just baked into the code. This is less of a hardware issue and more of a need for a proper optimization patch from Game Freak. Pokémon Shield, on the other hand, didn't receive a Switch 2 patch, so it's capped at 30 FPS. It benefits from extra stability, but visually it's still soft, especially in handheld mode where aliasing becomes very noticeable. Characters, shadows, and environmental geometry all show jagged edges due to the low resolution upscaling on a 1080p display. It's smoother now, but it's still limited by its original codebase. Pokemon Legends Arceus is an interesting middle ground. It didn't get a patch either, but it holds up better visually than Shield. Somehow the image appears less aliased and the frame rate is stable across the board. While it's not as sharp or as fluid as Violet, it's a solid experience, especially in docked mode. The Xenoblade series is well known for pushing the Switch's hardware to its limits, sometimes too far. On the original Switch and OLED model, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 struggled with frequent frame rate dips and aggressive dynamic resolution scaling, often dropping as low as 360p in handheld mode. It made for a muddy, inconsistent visual experience, but on the Nintendo Switch 2, it fares a bit better. While the game still uses dynamic resolution scaling, it stays near the top of its range much more consistently, even in complex open-world areas like Gorma or Moradane. Frame pacing is now rock solid, and while the image is still a little bit soft due to the resolution cap at 720p handheld and 900p docked, the experience is vastly more playable. I'm still working through Xenoblade 3 and I'd love to cover that next. Let me know in the comments if that's something you want to see. Then there's Xenoblade Chronicles X, the fan favorite Wii U port. This game ran at a mostly stable 30 FPS, but it had more frame dips than the original on the Wii U. Specifically in the city hub and larger outdoor zones where frame dips and pop-in were common, sometimes in combat. On the Switch 2, it holds a locked 30 FPS, even in New Los Angeles, which used to be a stutterfest from time to time. Fingers crossed for a resolution and frame rate patch, since they found something in the code that would allow 60 FPS mode, but there's still no word on that. I'm dreaming of a 1440p docked 1080p handheld mode running at 60 FPS. Come on, Monolith Soft, you know what the people want. Fire Emblem series, including Three Houses, Three Hopes, and other spin-offs like the Dynasty Warrior style games, have all had a common issue on the original Switch: resolution and performance inconsistency. These games were playable but suffered from soft visuals, dropped frame rates, and sometimes unstable frame pacing, especially during combat-heavy scenes or large-scale battles. Now on the Switch 2, the frame rate is finally locked in both handheld and dock modes. It makes a huge difference on how responsive combat feels. Visuals still leave a little to be desired, textures are low res, and the image is a bit blurred due to the scaling, but the stability of gameplay makes them far more enjoyable overall. If you skipped them due to performance before, it might be time to give them another shot. Speaking of Dynasty Warrior style games, Zelda Age of Calamity is infamous for its performance issues. On the original Switch, both docked and in handheld mode suffered frequent drops, sometimes dipping into the teens during chaotic combat, but on the Nintendo Switch 2, it's a completely different beast. Dock mode runs at a smooth 60 FPS, even in battles with dozens of enemies on screen, particle effects flying, and huge attack animations. That said, handheld mode still suffers visually. The image quality looks blurry and pixelated, especially in more demanding scenes, which can be immersion breaking. While performance is dramatically improved, the visuals could still use some attention. This is just how the game was designed. They had it running at a lower resolution in handheld mode to begin with, so that's why it looks so bad being run on a 1080p handheld screen. Recommendation: definitely play this one in docked for the best experience, and cross your fingers for a visual patch to fix the handheld mode. Hopefully before the sequel comes out, or maybe around the sequel launch window. I'm still testing more games on the Nintendo Switch too, so let me know in the comments what you want me to cover next. Did your favorite games get a patch? Do you want to see more comparisons to the Switch OLED or frame rate breakdowns on specific titles? Drop a comment and let me know. Be sure to like this video if you found it helpful, subscribe to Lunar Arcade, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on what's coming next. This is Lunar, signing off.